All right, we are back on. Naturally, first Facebook Live I do, internet shuts off, and we lost the connection. I really felt like I was on a roll there, but we had just talked about recovery, so now's a great opportunity for me to practice what I preach. So hopefully we'll get everybody back on, but we're really gonna stop where we left off. Again, there's several questions that I received from players, from parents, from coaches, and Emma, our social media manager, and I put them together and kind of wanted to answer them and see if there's anything really that we can give you guys to kind of work through. But the one that we left off on was whether it's important to only do work on the things that are your strengths, the things that you know will work in a game, or if you should really adapt and be versatile and work on things that maybe are your weaknesses, and really build on those. So I'll tell you, the when I go and work with a team in person, or whether I've got someone sitting down in my office, we always start in one place. It is on their strengths. It's on what we know works when they're playing well, what we know works when they're seeing success. What does that look like, right? What are they doing? What are those behaviors? And we start there because that's really the foundation. It only became good. You only became good at it because you put in the work to be able to get to that point, right? So I really think it's important to be able to focus on those strength areas, focus on the techniques that you know will work, because that's part of having that foundation. That's part of what you fall back on when you start to struggle. However, I also think it's important that you do work on those new techniques. You do work on new strategies. You work, on situations that you may not come up against every single day. Because if you're working on the worst case scenario, if you're working on new techniques, new skills, then we can start building off of that foundation. So you have to know what works for you, but you also have to know how you can build on that, because truthfully, it's really only a weakness because you don't spend time on it. Now, that does not mean you can be good at everything, because you have got to know your role, you have to know what you're good at, and then you really have to excel in those areas. But you also have to be able to be adaptable. And by preparing for that through your training, then it's a heck of a lot easier to be able to call on it under pressure when it matters most. So there's a balance of the two that's really, really unique and important, both in training, and then when you get under pressure, you can really fall back on that and call on that in order to improve and solve the, whatever challenge that you're facing at the time.
Would you say that that advice differs at all in age groups? So, say you're talking to a college athlete versus maybe a 12-year-old who doesn't have as much experience in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. So the at a younger level, the more experience we can get, the more reps we can get. That's how you navigate and figure out what you are actually good at. The older you get, I still think it's important to have versatility, and be able, because I mean, when we're thinking about it, especially it's really needed in sports where you have an opponent, because you have to be able to not be predictable, right?
Yeah.
So if you're able to be versatile, then that can be a strength within itself. However, especially the older we get, the more clearly defined roles are on a team. And so knowing what your role is, knowing if we're talking basketball, knowing if you're supposed to be distributing or if you're the guy who's supposed to be taking the shot, you have to know what that role is and then execute on that role first and foremost. Because if you're not executing on that role, which is usually where your strengths are, then you can't do anything to be adaptable at that point. So I do think there's still a balance no matter what level you're at, but it definitely becomes more clearly defined the older and more elite that you get. And by the way, for those of you who are just jumping in, Emma, our social media manager, come on around, Emma, is asking me questions. So from the background, some just that really honestly that we have come into play in working with athletes, coaches, and parents. So hit me with the next one.
The next one is, what do I do, talking them as a player asking this, what do I do if I'm not confident on the field and get anxiety when I mess up, especially during a game?
Okay, so what do I do if I'm not having a lot of confidence on the field, or just performing, period, and how do I handle that anxiety when it causes us to make a mistake, right? So couple thoughts here, really. First and foremost, mistakes are going to happen. Errors are going to happen. Even if you aren't, even if in everyone else's eyes you didn't mess up, there's still going to be mistakes in your eyes because you have high expectations for yourself. So being prepared for, when I'm working with a player, we always end up with talking about what is the worst case scenario, what is going to rock you, what is going to shake you, what's it going to look like, and how do we learn how to recover? How do we choose to respond in that situation? So when that anxiety causes you to make a mistake, knowing that you have a plan in place to be able to recover is half the battle that can cause you to settle your nerves a little bit before then. But even more than that, look, confidence, it's not easily built. You can be confident in one area, but maybe not be confident in the rest of the areas. Or you can be confident in hey, I'm confident in myself as a player, but when I step up to the plate or something, I don't bring the same type of confidence. Confidence really, to me, is built from three ways. Okay. First is really just that innate belief of I've got this, I can handle anything that's thrown at me, that kind of thing. That is really, really hard to grow. Some people have it, some people don't. Some people build it as they go on, the more that they play. Second way through where confidence is built, is really through repeated success. So I faced this challenge, I overcame this challenge. Now I feel like I'm better prepared the next time that I face this. Challenge with that is that you have to see success in order to make that happen. So you have to be put in that situation. The third one where you really can have the most impact on confidence is in your level of preparation. So when it comes to the physical stuff, are we getting in the appropriate amount of reps? Not just the appropriate amount of reps when it comes to are my mechanics right? That absolutely has to happen at a bare minimum, but also the appropriate amount of reps under pressure where there's a consequence before we ever get to the point where we're in competition. Because if we don't add that pressure, if we don't add those consequences, then we can't be prepared for it when it happens. So if you put yourself in situations like that where you do make mistakes in practice, in situations where it's going to be a challenge for you, things that you're maybe not quite so used to, then we feel better prepared. And then you're able to respond. And I choose to use the word respond because reaction is going to happen. You're going to get frustrated when you make a mistake, period. That's acceptable. That's okay. You should be frustrated. But when we prepare ourselves well enough, and then we're put in the situation, and then we see a little bit of success, that success starts to build, right? And we feel better prepared the next time we're out there. And then all of a sudden that innate, I've got this, I can handle whatever situation's thrown at me, starts to build as well. So really it's not a short-term fix, right? But when we're talking confidence, it's a longer kind of situation, right? But then, when it comes to the mistakes, they're going to happen. The best way to prepare yourself for them and handle the anxiety of them potentially happening is one, having a plan for when they do happen, so that the pressure, the importance of I can't make a mistake, oh no, like what's going to happen, starts to lessen. But then two, it's putting the right things in place so you feel better prepared. I mean, to just go out there and play and do your thing, play how you know to, how you know.
So that kind of transitions into one of the last questions that we said athletes mostly ask, which is why can I play well in practice, but when I get to a game, I can't compete as well. It's mostly confidence and the anxiety of just not having that pressure normally on you when you are in practice versus competing in a game.
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to transfer what you're doing in practice in training to can I do that under pressure when it matters in a game, in competition. That is one of the hardest things to do, but it all comes back to how you train, right? Are we training the fundamentals? Are those there at a bare minimum, right? The mechanics, this is how I feel when I'm doing something right. And then can we test those? Can we put those under fire? I can't even tell you how many times I talk to coaches and tell them, look, put them under fire early on. Don't break them, right?
Yeah.
But bend them. Make them understand that things will not go their way. And we have to figure out, what am I going to lose because of that? What are the consequences because of that? And now I've got to actually go out there and still do what I need to, even when things are not going right. And if you can train in that kind of way, train for mistakes, train for failure, train for Too, being able to do it right, being able to do it well. If you can train in that way, then it's a lot easier to transfer it when it actually happens. But part of that too then becomes, how are we evaluating it on the back end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we making sure that one training session, one practice session builds on the previous one? And then when we have a game, are we focusing on the things that we've been paying attention to and really been working in practice? Because in a game, you want to do everything right.
Yeah.
You can't. You absolutely can't. If you're focused on, especially depending on the age level, depending on what time we are in the season, especially, if you're trying to do everything right all at once, you are more than likely going to mess up big time. Focus in one area, two areas, three areas, build up so that then when we're trying to put an entire game together, now we've got the capabilities, the tools to be able to handle that. That's how we, yes, one, transfer it, but then also make it consistent. I mean, you can't have consistent performance unless you have consistent behaviors that build to that performance. We're trying to solve the equation. Well, we don't even have step one. That has absolutely got to happen. And it's got to be, put under fire.
Yeah.
It's got to be tested.
So one of the practical, I don't know if this is, you tell me or not, but when I played soccer in college, we couldn't necessarily recreate the nervousness, but when we were about to go take penalty kicks, we would run 4 or 5 sprints to get our heart rate up. That way we can focus and make sure that we had to make ourselves calm down before we ended up taking. Would that be one example of?
Absolutely.
And if so, what is another example? Like say softball or gymnastics or something like that.
Well, so first and foremost, our bodies respond a certain way when we have nerves, right? So it looks a little different depending on who you are, but some things that are typically consistent is the increased heart rate. Okay. If there's a lot of pressure and we're having rapid thoughts, especially if they are, tend to go to the more negative side of, oh no, what's going to happen? Or they're just, hyperactive. It can also cause some type of tension, right? And when that tension is caused, when the heart rate increases, when we have that shallow breath, it causes us to, in some cases, get so body focused that in a situation where we should trust our mechanics, trust our training, like a penalty kick, instead we're so focused on our body and our mechanics in it that we start to doubt those. Ooh, something feels off. Something doesn't feel quite right. Especially if you've got the doubt that naturally comes in, the anxiety that comes in with it, that just the anxious type feelings, right? All of that builds. So the perfect opportunity, specifically, I actually worked with a collegiate men's basketball team, and what we did, we were training for free throws. So that it was straight conditioning to get our rapid heart rate. We'd have shortness of breath, and then we're not going to go and take 10 free throw shots, because when would we? How is that situational at all? It's not. No, we're going to be exhausted, like we've run up and down the court like it's the last minute of the game, and this free throw matters, because if we don't hit it, whole team's going to have to run again, and now we're going to see if we can hit the first one, and train how quickly can you settle down your body, because there's really two trains of thought. Either you slow down your thoughts to slow down your body and hope that it follows, or if you can't control your thoughts, which is really, really hard to do, influence them, yes, control them, not so much. You can slow down your body to then allow your thoughts to really follow suit, right? Or at least simplify a little bit, kind of let go of the distractions. And so how quickly, not only can we handle it when heart rate is up, breathing is shallow, that kind of thing, but how quickly can we settle ourselves down, train in our focus, our thought to just let me go through my routine, let me see this spot, and let me shoot, let me execute, right? Because when we're like that under pressure, it's rapid thoughts, it's increased heart rate, and then it's a lot of tension too. And in a moment like that, tension's not that great for you, right? You're going to have a little bit of it, but you have to be able to settle in and stay right here versus somewhere else.
We've gotten to the parent questions.
Fantastic. Okay. So now we also, have talked to parents a lot. And there's some questions, that really people have asked of, how can I work on these things for my athlete? How can I really be their best advocate, right? And help them in the things that they're struggling on. So we put together a few of those. So To be honest,
Well,
I don't remember all of them, so you have to throw them at me.
yeah, no, it's fine. One of the major ones was my child. I don't feel like my child is aggressive enough. How do I change their mentality, especially like talking about high school and college, so they get noticed more for
Yeah.
colleges and stuff?
Yeah. So my child is not aggressive enough. How can I get them to be more aggressive? And the funny thing is that's not just with, parents. Hear that a lot with coaches too. That we really need our team to be more aggressive in what they're doing. When it comes to being aggressive, um, not everybody's going to be the same, right? Each individual has a different personality. Some are more likely to be aggressive. Some are less likely to be aggressive. I do think it comes a lot back to what we were kind of speaking on earlier, is that confidence piece. If I know my job, if I've trained my job well, right? If I know what I'm supposed to be doing and I've trained it well, if I know the plays, if I know, what's my position in this, what's my job in this, and then I train that, and then I train that under pressure, then it's a heck of a lot easier to go all out. So rather than just, I want you to be aggressive, that is such a broad term. I want you to know what you need to do, and I want you to go all out in it, period. And if you can do that, that then looks from the stands, from the sidelines of the coach, that looks like they're being more aggressive because they're fully committing. You cannot fully commit unless you actually know what you need to do. And you cannot fully commit until you're actually, focused in and have practice executing that in challenging times, period. So when we're speaking about being more aggressive as a parent, um, point out times when they have been more aggressive, when they've been going all out, when they dive for a loose ball, when they really, going hard for a tackle, that kind of thing. When they're going all out on what they're actually trying to do in that moment, point it out. Reinforcing that is huge, right? If you don't, a lot of times, I'll tell you this, depending on the age, you may or may not remember everything that happened in the game. Film is huge for that, right? So go back and watch it. Pick out a couple of those moments. As a parent, you absolutely can reinforce those moments, and help them with that. If you label it as you're not an aggressive player, then they are going to live up to that label, point blank and period.
Yeah.
So you have to tell them, this is when you were aggressive, or this is when you were, like, that was awesome. Love that. That is exactly what you need to be doing. Let's continue doing that. And, from a coaching perspective, put them in situations where they can do that, and give that feedback of, if we need to be more all out, if we need to go all in, then here's what it looks like. Here's what being aggressive looks like. Because sometimes people, if I tell you, go be aggressive, go focus, I mean, well, what does that even mean? Yeah, what does that even mean? Tell me what that looks like. And in fact, as a coach, I need to tell you what that looks like. As a parent, I need to tell you what that looks like. But also as a player, you need to tell me, what do I think that looks like? Are they on the same page? Because I may be thinking I'm being aggressive, but from the outside, it just doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because they're mentally grinding.
What do you say to the parents who say, there's people committed on my team, and obviously we're talking about like high school. I mean, I don't know now because now there's eighth graders committed, but to the parents that say, the most aggressive ones on the team, the typical aggressive that stand out on the field the most are normally the tallest and the biggest. They're already committed. That means that college coaches like that, you need to change, so you need to be more aggressive.
Yeah. So having been on the side where trying to help kids get recruited, having also been on the side where I see what goes into recruiting, sad fact is not everybody gets seen very easily. Some players do get seen more than others. There's a reason why there's a very low percentage of high school athletes that play at the collegiate level. The requirement of them is extremely high. I don't think, aggression is the only thing that goes into play. But again, if they know, if they put in the time and put in the effort and work on the things that they need to, and then they show that under pressure when it does matter in a game, there might be opportunities. I'm not saying that that's going to absolutely get you an opportunity. That's the sad fact of it. But I will point out, for any sport, their different positions and their different roles that they need filled. And maybe that what you see in that kid is aggressive, being aggressive, but what the collegiate coach sees in that kid is that kid's willing to lay it on the line, that kid's willing to take risks,
Yeah.
right? And so maybe instead of just pushing the aggressive piece of it, which I do think is important, but let's lay it all out on the line. Let's not be afraid of mistakes. Let's take some risks. Those things are absolutely important. And how that looks on the field, on the court, on the wherever we are, to a coach, that then tells me as a coach, okay, this player's gonna I'm gonna find a place for them, right? Ideally everybody would be seen. Everybody's not.
Yeah.
You can put your child in the best position to be seen possible, and put them on the right teams, know where they're going to get exposure, but that exposure certainly does not matter unless they are confident enough in themselves to be able to go out there, do what they need to do, and if something bad happens, they can recover quickly. Because somebody who throws a temper tantrum out there, somebody who comes off and is mad at the coach or mad at their parent, I'm not recruiting them.
Yeah.
Certainly not.
The second question that parents normally ask is, what does my child's body language tell me, especially after coming off of a game?
Yeah, body language is huge, right? There are a lot of studies out there about what body language means. There are certain postures that say if I'm taking up space, if I'm bigger, I seem more confident. I am more confident. I look more confident. If I'm smaller, if my head's down, if my shoulders are down, then maybe I'm a little more timid. I'm less willing to take risks, right? I'm more in my own thoughts and in my own head. But really, when it comes to body language, from a parent's perspective, pay attention to when there is a change, a shift in body language, okay? Because each person's body language is going to be unique. But when there's a big shift, after you make a mistake, of course your head's going to drop.
Yeah.
I mean, look, again, if you are any type of competitor, you don't like to make mistakes. Even the most talented, elite, like professional players, they don't want to make mistakes either, right? They get frustrated when they make mistakes. So dropping their head, for a second, that's very different from, okay, now I'm holding back. Now I'm playing small. I'm acting like I don't want the ball. I don't want anything to come to me. I don't want any opportunities. That kind of body language is oftentimes a direct reflection of the grinding that's going on mentally. Whether it's I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have made that mistake. I'm not good enough. I don't know why I keep doing this. And it's less of a the negative thoughts are bad, because in all honesty, sometimes I use negative thoughts to help me, right?
Yeah.
But it's more of, there's so many of them that they become overwhelming. So when you see that shift in body language, first, don't freak out. See if they recover on their own, right? And pay attention, maybe if you see some patterns in it, like every time they get pulled and have to go sit on the bench or something like that. But don't freak out. See if they recover from it, and then really reinforce, maybe not necessarily the positive body language, but the productive body language. The one that if in order to play big on the field, you have to be big, right? In order to be aggressive, like we were talking about earlier, defensively in basketball, your hands have to be moving. You have to have quick feet, right? You have to be active. You cannot be active if we're small, if we're feeling like we're timid. So pay attention as a parent. Pay attention to and players too. It's just a little bit harder when you're in it than when you're stuck in it. But pay attention to when there are big shifts, and then and if there are patterns of when those shifts happen. Okay, we need to address that, right? But pay attention to when there are shifts, and then actively, intentionally make a change. I'm not saying that when you just made a mistake, you need to be, oh, I'm so happy. No, be frustrated. It's okay. That's perfectly fine. But what I am saying is that we don't have to be happy, but we do need to, settle ourselves back down, get a little bit bigger, pick ourselves up so that, hey, our eyes are up, we can see the field. Our eyes are up, we can see the court. Our chin's up, we know what's going on. And not only that, but I can actually make the movements that I need to in order to be successful. Because what happens is, the body language is a reflection of what's going on internally, right? And then if we choose not to recover, it starts to cycle downhill. And then we get more and more problems that then reinforce, I should be concerned about making mistakes, because I always make mistakes, right?
So one of the last kind of things that we can talk about is
Yeah.
as a coach during a game, whenever, or as a parent after a game, is it better or more effective to address body language or the mental side of it? Because like we've already talked about, they are pretty much linked. So which one would be easier to address as a parent? Say, hey, because I used to always get told, well, pick up, like just walk. Keep your head up, like, and that will all of a sudden fix everything. Or hey, you play like it's okay, like we make mistakes, but like that didn't necessarily change the body language. So in your opinion, like what are your thoughts on that?
So each player's different, right? And I won't claim to know that I know every relationship with a parent and a kid, right? If you coach them, it's a little different versus if you're, always watching them from the stands. But not a rule, but good, thought is that we're not addressing those things immediately after the game happened. If you're, first off, if you're at a young enough age as an athlete, they should be excited that they played. They should be excited that they had fun. Like those are the focus. That's the focus, right? If you're a little bit older, have a little bit more of a a higher IQ of what you're actually doing out there, and what you were supposed to do. You're hard enough on yourself. You know what went wrong and you know how to fix it, right? So there's still, you have to, a lot of times as parents, as coaches, we give feedback so quickly. We don't give an opportunity for the actual athlete to assess what just happened and evaluate it on their own, right? Even if we're coming to the same conclusions, it doesn't matter. You have to have the ownness to say, this is what happened. This is what should have happened. This is how I need to fix it. Now let's have a conversation about it. As a parent, again, depending on the relationship, right? You can still have that conversation. You can point out, a lot of times you don't really know. I have families coming here all the time, and I'm sitting down one-on-one with an athlete, and their parents didn't even know that those were the thoughts that were going on in their head, right? What they assumed was happening was not even the same thing that was actually going on, right? Because not everybody's willing to share that kind of thing, right? So paying attention to, you can, as a parent, if you're going to explore that, right? You can point out both, like, hey, I saw when X happened, this is what you look like. What was going on, right? Because ultimately, I need to know as a parent, as a coach, that you can see what happened on the field, on the court, wherever, evaluate it yourself, and come to your own conclusion first and foremost, period. And then we can make adjustments off of that. Maybe what you thought happened out there wasn't actually what happened, right? So coming from a parent perspective, you can talk about both. You can choose to talk about one. Talk about, not every athlete knows what their body language is out on the field. Not every athlete's aware of it. So if you tell them, hey, I saw you drop your head, they might not even know that until they look at film later. So you're really not teaching them anything in that moment if they don't even remember what happened.
Wrapping it up.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. Well, thank you guys for everyone who came on. Like I said, we're just trying to pull together some questions that people have asked, over the time that I've been working with them, and really kind of try to answer them to the best of my abilities. Thank you also for those of you who bared with us through the technical difficulties. Again, 100% my first Facebook Live. I will be the first to admit I was extremely nervous. So your girl gets nervous too. And had to use a little bit of my own strategies when it came to overcoming that. It took me about 20 minutes to really settle in. But thank you so much again for hopping on. Please let me know. You can shoot me a message or anything if there are any questions you have for future ones. If Emma still forces me, we're probably going to do this weekly, so maybe
we'll be doing this weekly. I'm a enforcer.
So we will be doing it weekly. So I'm gonna have to get a little bit more comfortable. So you guys help me out, and I'll be good to go. So, but anyway, so if you've got any questions, send them our way. Would love to hear from you guys. Give us some feedback. Also, feel free. I know this is on Facebook. I think we're gonna put it on YouTube as well. So we're trying to build up a little YouTube channel, so you can have some videos out there. So please just follow me on Facebook. Ask whatever questions you've got. Provide us with some feedback. Also go to the YouTube channel. It's just Megan Gilbert. I think she
MS,
knows
yeah.
everything.
Megan
social.
Gilbert MS.
Yeah,
I
she
will
knows
link it
everything.
in the video below. Do a little YouTube subscription.
Let's go. Let's go. See, look, she rocks, right? I let her take care of that kind of stuff. But anyway, thank you again. And we'll be back on next week.